Hello, and thank you for joining us for the third episode of this web series on Self Publishing 101, your journey to self publishing. My name is Khadijah Ali Coleman, also known as the Creative Midwife. And as always, it's a pleasure to serve you in helping you begin your self publishing journey. So, if you have not taken a look at episode 1 and 2, I encourage you to stop and to go back. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can just simply type in Self-Publishing 101, Journey to Self-Publishing, Khadijah Ali Coleman, or Liberated Muse, because it is on our YouTube page and you should be able to go back. I'll also just drop the links in the description of this video so that you can click and watch the two before if you haven't already. But we've already begun talking about self-publishing on a budget. The questions that we've been asking um, revolve around what to do once you've already begun writing and you have completed your first draft. This web series is to explore some of the popular, not so popular strategies that I offer to self-publishing, understanding that those who are watching this are most likely to have a modest budget. So my recommendations are taken into consideration. What are some things, some do-it-yourselves ways to begin your journey when you have a modest budget? So the order of operations that I've been talking about is that you have your first draft, and then you do a series of things that lead to your final draft, and then you do a series of things that lead to your finished product. We're on the third episode in this web series, and we are still looking at all of the processes that are involved once you have completed that first draft. So, in the episode before, we talked about what to do to choose your publishing company, because that's actually what you do after you reread your your manuscript, and determine that you do want to engage in self-publishing. You choose your publishing company because that will give you an idea based on the cost of certain things, whether or not you will hire a self-publishing company that provides certain services, excuse me, or you will make the determination to go about certain things on your own. All right, so watch the episode before on how to go about choosing a publishing company. So after we've done that, chosen a publishing company, where do we go next? Do we look at proofreading and editing, building your team, designing your book cover, developing your marketing plan? What do? You build your team. Okay, you build your team. And building your team can, for some people, it's one, maybe another person. That person who looks over your manuscript for you, who helps make suggestions, or for some people, it's a series of people that will help you with your process. Of course, that has to do with what your needs are after you've already determined what you are doing regarding self-publishing. Are you buying a package where they provide you with proofreading editing services? Are you buying a package where they're going to be doing the marketing and distribution for you? For many, that is not the case. My clients who hire me have determined that they need to hire an editor or a proofreader or someone to help outline their chapters for their book that is apart from the publishing company that they're going to be using. Okay. So possible team members that you may have include an editor or a proofreader, or a graphic designer, a web designer, a publicist. These are just examples of who you need on your team. And so let's start with the editor. Okay. Again, if even if editing is part of the self-publishing package that you purchased, you have to be clear and understand, and don't allow anyone to tell you that editing is the same as proofreading. What is editing? Before I even get into that, take a minute to read or just look over. You don't have to read it completely. Just look over this passage, a really long passage. And as you can see, there are many things that can be done to make this an easier read, to make this make sense, um, to just help this passage out, okay? So you can pause the video to read it, but I'm going to go to the next and give you an example of what an editor has done. So if you've read thoroughly the paragraph before it was edited down, you'll see that now it reads a bit easier. You might want to stop the video so that you can read to notice the differences between this edited version and the original paragraph. Some of the things that you'll notice is that it's easier to understand. The final sentence, it has been cut out, but what you're now seeing is that it's a much smaller, a leaner paragraph where it's very clear. However, it's not so many words as to say the same thing as it was before, where it was just a lot of words. Everything wasn't necessarily making the point that was trying to be made. So there's a difference between editing and proofreading. And this piece, there are definitely some things that were fixed grammatically, which a proofreader would do, but editing was the main gist of what was done. And for the most part, it was made, the piece was made to be more clear. Clarity was added. How do you make things more clear? Well, you may trade out certain words. You may rearrange certain pieces. If you notice in the initial piece that it was a different opening sentence. Some of the parts of the paragraph were moved around, so clarity was added because it was organized a bit better. In addition, as I had said earlier, clarity was added because a lot of those words blah, 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 were taken out. A lot of times when we write, particularly when we're in our free writing zone, we add words or we say things that aren't necessarily necessary to the actual story. And that's what an editor does. They keep the focus on the story. Okay? I've coached and I've worked with clients who, when they give me their final draft, or their first draft, that we're working to make it a final draft, and I edit certain things out, they are not pleased or happy with me because these are their creative babies, and I understand. But as an editor, I am not emotionally attached. And so I am reading for clarity. I am reading for the story to be concise, but to keep me focused on the story. So as an editor, I'm going to take out those things that keep us away from the focus on the story. So then what is the difference? What does a proofreader do that an editor is not going to do? Well, so I personally offer packages where editing and proofreading are both done, but there are some people who they may have a designated editor, but they want someone to just proof it, make sure that things are grammatically correct. So going back to the passage that I showed, the paragraph that I showed you before, the proofreader will go through, make sure that things are grammatically correct. As you can see, there were a lot of things that were grammatically incorrect with that paragraph. Even after, before it was edited, some things needed to be made grammatically correct so that you could even understand what they were trying to say. So a proofreader is definitely going to be the grammar police. They're going to just chop it up. If you recall English classes where your English teacher went over your papers with the red marker or the red pen, that is what your proofreader is going to do, is going to be the grammar police on your manuscript. They're going to be the ones who are privy to and what a verb is, what an adverb versus an adjective is, whether something needs to be capitalized. They may use spell check, but then they go over it again because they know that spell check really checks for words that are not words, okay? But you may have a word, something, and if in this particular passage that I used as an example, the author put in words, but they were incorrect words for the context of what was being written. And that happens a lot when you may use for, F-O-R, instead of the number for, F-O-U-R. The twos get a lot of people, T-O, T-O-O, T-W-O, what is it? So your proofreader is going to be somebody who has that skill and is able to quickly say, okay, this is an incorrect fit. And they're looking at the grammatical makeup of your manuscript, whereas the editor is looking at what is impacting the story and how can I make this story more concise or clear for my client. If you are if you're going to have a book that's going to have illustration on book art, instead of just fonts and the title of the book, then you might want to consider a graphic designer if that's not your thing. As you can see, the book on the right, I was the editor for this book, and the submissions included visual artists, and one of the artists who submitted, her piece was perfect for the image that I had in mind for this anthology. And so she was submitting her work to be included in the book, but I actually asked her, could her art be one of her pieces that she submitted, could it be the cover art? And she was more than happy to oblige. This woman, Sharon Burton, actually went on to work with me to curate an exhibit of the visual art that was in the book. We had an exhibit in an establishment in Washington, D.C. So I had a relationship with this person because she was actually a contributor to the book. That may not be the case for you. You may not be editing a book or publishing a book where it's many contributors. You may be the only person that is working with this book. So unless graphic design is your thing, and that's what you do, you are most likely going to have to hire somebody or barter or make an arrangement with somebody to design your book cover. And if you have chosen to not go with the publishing company, if that's something that they offer, the self-publishing company. The book on the left is one of my clients, Karen Miners, and her husband is a graphic artist, so he designed her book cover for her. What you're going to do is determine if it's cheaper and in your best interest to find your own team members or use the ones offered by the publishing company in a nutshell. Okay, so my question, if you're watching this and you've already put together your team or started thinking about who's going to go in your team, give us some ideas how you did it, if it's anything different than what I've suggested. Would love to hear from you in the comments. Some of the tips that I just went over and indicate that the editing and proofreading are not the same. One thing that I didn't go over was talking about the publicist or PR person who is on a team. But I did want to say that if a publicist is someone that you're considering, a publicist gets media attention for your book mainly, but they don't sell it. So they are the person who finds opportunities for you to go out and promote your book, but they're not going to be the person who is actually selling your book. They're the person that's going to get you a spot at a book festival to speak so that you can promote your book. So that's the difference between a publicist versus a promoter, or I guess a publicist and a promoter are the same thing. A publicist, excuse me, versus a distributor, okay? Whoever you hire, make sure you check references and make sure you have a written agreement documenting your relationship. For instance, If you are using the artwork of someone else, for instance, from the anthology that I showed you earlier, and for a subsequent anthology that I put together, those who contributed the cover art for my anthology, they retain the copyright to their work. If you are hiring somebody to design your book cover, if you know that you want to have original art, that's something that you have to contractually agree to, so that you are not agreeing that you have to divide any type of royalties for the book with the person who designed your cover. So those are things that you have to flesh out in contractual form before you have the book created and begin to sell it. Okay, so that's a look at the first or the third edition of this web series. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section or reach out to me at info@birthyourcreativity.com. You can visit me online at birthyourcreativity.com. My name is Khadijah Ali Coleman, your creative midwife. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.